Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are going deep into the dry breath of a cave where hyenas once laughed at the edges of firelight. You are curled into your blanket, right? Good. Because outside this ancient rock hollow, something is watching. Something clever. Something that doesn't blink when you look back. You probably won't survive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and the local time you're listening. I'm curious who else is out there watching the dark with you. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You wake with a cough. Not the dramatic kind, just that throat dust sort that reminds you you're not in your own bed. The cave breathes quietly behind you, a big stone lung filled with stale memory. It smells of old smoke, damp bones, and something you can't quite name. You've lit no fire. You didn't need to. There's already a faint glow coming from the entrance, flickering like fire, but cold and dry like moonlight filtered through something moving. You hear it first not with your ears but in your ribs, a short, jerky giggle. Then silence. Then the sound of sand being shifted just enough to suggest pause. You hold your breath. You've heard stories of lions, bears, maybe even wolves, but none of them ever laughed like that. Out there in the dark, two pale dots hover. Eyes, yellowish like melted candle wax in water, and still watching you. Here's a thing you must not know: hyena eyes don't glow like cats. Their reflective layer, the tapetum lucidum, is there, sure, but it's weirdly dull. Instead of sparkling back your flashlight like a deer might, they kind of absorb your attention, like a question you didn't mean to ask. The creature shifts. You expect it to pounce or growl or even bark, but it just smiles. Not that friendly Disney smile. No, that grin of too many teeth, too much confidence, like it knows something about you. Because it does. Hyenas, long before they were safari cartoon villains or misunderstood scavengers, were rememberers. Across ancient Africa, Arabia, even into Ice Age Europe, they appeared not just in bones but in stories. A people could forget where they buried a friend. A people could forget the shape of a god. But a hyena would remember both, often by digging them up. Historians still debate whether the cave hyenas of Paleolithic Europe ever clashed with early humans directly, but here's what's not in doubt. They lived in the same places, stalked the same prey, and filled the same caves with the same gnawed bones. In fact, more than one archaeologist has found Neanderthal remains with puncture marks, suspiciously shaped like hyena molars, which doesn't look great on the fossil resume. You scoot back in your cave bed, maybe accidentally kicking over a pile of ash. It puffs up like it's sighing, and you remember something. This isn't your cave, you just found it. A shelter from last night's storm. That pile in the corner, the one you thought was just debris. It's a skull now, clearly hyena. But one of the eye sockets has been carefully stuffed with moss. You tell yourself someone was just being artistic. You don't believe yourself. That's another thing. Humans have always suspected hyenas knew something we didn't. Their laughs aren't just cackles, they're actually vocal cues specific to rank, mood, even identity. Scientists found that individual hyenas can be identified by their giggles. Basically, their laughs are name tags. One paleontologist joked, "You could send them to a cocktail party and they'd sort themselves out better than us." Weirdly comforting, right? Now you step towards the entrance. Not too close. The eyes are gone. You smell meat, but it's old buried. The kind of scent you only catch when the earth breathes funny. Hyenas are famous for eating every part of a carcass: bones, hooves, even teeth. But sometimes they don't eat. Sometimes they just move things. Rearranging, collecting, burying even. Not for storage, for something else. There's a theory, half serious, that hyenas are the original undertakers. That their dens littered with bones were once mistaken for ritual burial sites. And maybe that's not a mistake. Maybe it's a handoff. You forget. They remember. Here's a weird side note. Some cultures believe that hyenas could hypnotize people, that their eyes made you walk willingly into your own grave. Total nonsense, obviously. Probably. Except one ancient Arabic text describes a spell involving hyena fat that lets you hear the voices of the dead. What was it doing in your ancestors' medicine pouch? You shake your head. You're doing that thing again, letting folklore creep up behind logic and give it a wet willy. But still those eyes. You step outside. The wind hits you in the face like a complaint. The sky's still gray, early, but there's a line of tracks leading away from the cave. Not your boots, not human. Each print is crisp in the dust as though it was made seconds ago, but when you follow them back, they stop. Just stop. No hyena. No trail into the brush. Just those prints facing you. Watching. You back away, suddenly needing to be inside. Back with the bones, the moss-eyed skull, and whatever story you interrupted by sleeping here. You promise yourself you'll leave soon, but the air inside the cave smells like it's been waiting for you. Later, when you finally do move on, you'll find the tracks are still there. Days later. Still pointed at the cave. Still remembering. You are 2 valleys away before you feel your shoulders relax. The sun is higher now, burning off the chill like it's trying to erase the memory of dawn. But memory isn't so easy to scrub off, not when you've stepped through a place like that. By midday, you're standing on a ridge, squinting into a wind-blasted basin below. That's when you see them bones. Hundreds? Maybe more. Arranged like an accident that took its time? No skin, no flies, no smell. Just a bleached chaos, so deliberate it makes your teeth itch. You descend. The closer you get, the less random it feels. It's not a kill site, not a graveyard either. It's a map, but not the kind you can fold up. The bones are mostly antelope, but here's the thing. Each one is broken in exactly the same place. Femurs split down the shaft. Tibias cracked like someone wanted the marrow but not the meat. Ribs peeled open like puzzle boxes. And here's where it gets weird. Some of the bones are stacked. Not chaotically, stacked. Like someone was building a small wall and got bored halfway through. A few vertebrae are balanced upright, and just to make sure your brain can't take the easy way out, there's a skull placed right at the center, smaller, rounded. Human. You say nope aloud, because speaking helps, doesn't it? But your voice feels swallowed. Like the landscape is a mouth that doesn't like talking back. So you do what any archaeologically curious idiot would do, you poke around. Not too deep, just enough to ruin your day. Here's a fact: hyenas, especially spotted ones, have jaw pressure strong enough to crush elephant bones. You already knew that, probably. What you might not know is that they select which bones to crack. Not out of malice, just efficiency. The cleanest splits for the highest return. The result is a signature break pattern so consistent that archaeologists use it to distinguish between human tool use and hyena scavenging. And yet here, it's too regular. Almost ceremonial. Historians still debate whether this kind of deliberate arrangement was a human act, ritualistic offerings, or the work of the hyenas themselves. It's hard to say. But here's what breaks your spine a little. The bones aren't fossilized. They're recent. Not modern, but not ancient either. Maybe a few centuries old. Old enough to forget the story, new enough to feel it still breathing. You sit on a flat rock nearby. Take a sip of the water you barely remembered bringing. A cloud passes over the sun and suddenly the world looks flatter. Less real. That's when you notice it every time the wind shifts, a sound follows. Not quite laughter, not quite wind. Something between. Do you hear it? Someone says behind you. You flinch so hard your bottle spills. But there's no one there. You're alone, right? Here's your off-topic treat in Ethiopia. There's a man who feeds wild hyenas by hand every night. He calls them by name. They come running polite as dinner guests. He holds raw meat in his teeth and lets them take it. It's not a circus act, it's tradition. Locals believe that feeding the hyenas keeps bad spirits away, that the animals act as intermediaries between this world and the one below it. You think about that as you stand again. The human skull at the center of the bone arrangement stares up at you like it's waiting for a punchline. You try to look away, but your gaze always comes back. One of the long bones near your foot is etched. You kneel. It's not writing exactly, not letters, just hash marks, lines crossing lines. But they're not random. There's rhythm. Sections of 5, repeated patterns. You mutter tally marks and then wish you hadn't said it aloud. Because who or what was counting? The wind picks up again and the bone stacks clatter just enough to sound like teeth. You decide that's your cue. But as you turn to leave, something very small and very specific stops you, a single claw. Not a big one, not lion or leopard. It's blunt, curved, and worn. You know that shape. It's from a hyena forepaw used more for digging than slashing, and it's placed gently on top of the human skull. You don't take a photo, you don't draw it, you just look at it once, hard. So your brain has no excuse to forget it later. As you walk away, the wind kicks up dust and bone fragments like confetti at a wedding you never agreed to attend. You glance back only once and the center skull is still watching. Much later, when you reach the next ridgeline and look down, the arrangement is almost invisible. Just a field of bleached white dots, like stars. But you know what's down there. You know what it means now. Memory doesn't need flesh. It sharpens itself on bone, and sometimes it laughs. You arrive at the ruins by accident, the way most trouble starts. Just past an acacia grove with thorns sharp enough to deflate your ego. There's a clearing littered with smooth stones and what used to be walls. The stones are too square to be natural, too scattered to be useful. It's the leftovers of a place people once lived, maybe even tried to forget. But the strange part isn't the ruins. It's the burial mound nearby, barely a hump really. Covered in flat rocks outlined with faded ochre pigment and guarded by a little wooden post. You think it's going to be another forgotten ancestor, a crumbling jawbone, maybe a tooth or two. But the grave isn't human, it's hyena. You pause, blink, read the nearby scratched-in writing on the post again, even though it's in a language you don't fully recognize. But the symbols, those you get, they're old. They suggest an offering, not a warning. Something buried, not because it needed to be hidden, but because it deserved to rest. And it's not the only one. You walk slowly, you find 5 more, 6. All small, neat, shallow graves. All for hyenas. So, what is this? A pet cemetery. An ancient prank, except it's not funny. Not with the way the air shifts here. Not with the way the wind holds its breath when you stop walking. Here's your historical fact. In the Middle Paleolithic layers at Chasm Cave in Israel, researchers discovered cut marks on hyena bones that weren't consistent with simple butchery. Some believe the animals were intentionally processed in a symbolic way. And in parts of ancient Arabia and Ethiopia, there are legends of hyenas that guided souls or served as protectors of memory, creatures respected, even feared, not merely hated. Historians still debate whether those burials were reverence, fear, or just pragmatic disposal. Maybe they were a way to keep hyenas from haunting you. Maybe they were promises. We won't dig you up if you don't dig us up. You squat beside one of the graves and brush back some dirt. The top rock has a handprint, not carved, pressed in soft clay, then fired by time. And just underneath the stone's edge, you see something else. Hair, mummified, still attached to hide. It's striped like a brown and gray watercolor painting. You want to laugh, you don't, but the urge is there, because this is absurd, right? People don't bury hyenas. People don't treat them like honored dead. People don't sit beside their graves and whisper as if someone might answer. Except apparently they did. And apparently you do. Why you whisper? The wind doesn't respond. But the tree line does. A rustle. Then quiet. then one short giggle that sounds too high, too forced, too human to be anything else. You straighten up and back away slowly. You've never been here before, but something in you feels like you just broke a rule. Like you stepped across a sacred line in your socks, tracking in modern doubt across the woven rug of the past. Your off-topic fact. Some species of termites build cathedrals of dirt, massive towers with internal air conditioning, spiral staircases, and fungus gardens. They've been called insect skyscrapers, and yet you step on them without thinking. Respect comes in odd shapes. Sometimes it's striped and laughing. Sometimes it's six-legged and architectural. Back to the hyenas. You walk along a worn stone path just beyond the gravesite and notice faint markings on the sides of a broken pillar. Not letters, not art, just a pattern, a circle of jagged lines surrounding a laughing face. You'd call it crude, but it doesn't feel primitive. It feels intentional. Someone scratched this in to be remembered. And who carves a laughing hyena into a support column unless they want the ceiling to stay up? You try to picture the people who once lived here, their fires, their stories, their version of bedtime. Maybe they didn't scare their kids with tales of monsters. Maybe they warned them about memory instead. Maybe they whispered, "Don't forget what the hyena saw, because it won't forget you." You turn back to the mound. The post is still standing, the grave still sealed, but you swear just for a moment you see the handprint glow. Not like magic, just like heat or memory. Something rising from deep in the dirt that remembers being touched. You leave without brushing off your boots. You don't want to track this place into whatever comes next. That night you set camp far from the ruins. No fires, just a warm stone at your back and the stars above. But sleep doesn't come easy. Your dreams are full of gnawing sounds, not sharp, not brutal, just steady, rhythmic, as though something with a wide jaw and a slow heart is chewing time into something it can swallow. And every so often you hear a laugh, but not the mean kind, not mocking. The kind you might make when you remember a face you loved and the ridiculous thing they said once, right before they disappeared. You wake before dawn, mouth dry, breath shallow. And for just a moment, just one thin second, you see a shadow beside the fireless pit. Four-legged. Watching. But then it's gone. You whisper, "Good morning," just in case it's polite. Because if someone once buried a hyena to remember something, maybe you've just remembered it too. You follow the stone riverbed at dawn, feet, tracing the curve of dry water like a pilgrim without a god. The air is different here, thinner, but not in the mountain kind of way. It's thinner in memory, like whatever used to live here has already left, but not entirely. That's when you find the path. It doesn't look like much. A narrow trail carved through dry grass and sunburnt soil. But it repeats. A shallow groove worn deeper than the game tracks slicing through the land like a lazy scar. It runs straight for a while, then bends at a specific angle like it's remembering something the landscape forgot. You step onto it without thinking. The ground feels firmer, more obedient under your boots. You're not the first one here, not even close. Here's a historical fact. Some ancient migration trails weren't made by humans or herds, but by hyenas. Spotted hyenas in particular are known to travel dozens of kilometers every night, always along the same route. Over generations, those trails become more than just movement. They become inherited memory. Some even followed seasonal rhythms aligning with moon phases or equinox light. Modern researchers have mapped them tracks that act like calendars. Historians still debate whether early humans followed those paths for convenience, or because they believed something sacred had walked there first. You follow the curve of the trail and find a stone marker. Not tall, just a knee-high slab with a spiral scratched into one side. Not a perfect spiral, more like a crooked loop, the kind you draw when you're trying to remember a face, but all you have is the smile. You squat beside it, running your fingers over the grooves. The center of the spiral is worn smooth, touched too many times, and around the base, claw prints. Not fossilized, just dried into the hardened mud, maybe a few years old. 4 toes, broad heel, not canine. Hyena, you stand again. The sun has risen enough to cast shadows in odd directions. Every few steps you take, your own shape flickers beside you in a way that makes you glance twice. There's another marker ahead. Same design, same spiral. This time it's flanked by what looks like worn bone shards arranged in a crescent. A joke flickers through your brain. Maybe the hyenas were ancient stonemasons. Then another thought follows, maybe the joke isn't yours. Here's an off-topic fact. There's a fungus in the Amazon that infects ants and controls their behavior, guiding them to climb high before dying, so the fungus can better spread. It's called a zombie fungus. Why bring it up? Well, because the hyena trails remind you of that. Like something external once guided these creatures across the earth, not with brain parasites, but with rituals, rhythms, the moon, bones. Who knows? You take a sip of water. It tastes like dust even though it isn't. You check your compass, then laugh. Not because you're lost, but because the trail doesn't care about direction. It loops, bends, doubles back. Not like it's confused, but like it's teaching a lesson you're not ready to learn. As you follow the next curve, you spot something ahead, a low stone platform, like a seat. No carvings, no markings, just there. You sit. The view is strange, not beautiful, not ominous, just balanced. Hills rise at either side like arms. The path runs straight towards you, then off behind the platform, disappearing into a dip you hadn't noticed before. You feel like you're part of the road now, like the hyenas passed through you. You breathe in, then out. Then laugh quietly, because you're not alone. A shape moves in the brush. Not fast, just steady, four-legged, broad, too low for a lion, too thick for a jackal. And when it pauses, you hear it a giggle. Just once. And then it's gone. You stand, not afraid, not exactly, but you feel watched. Not in a bad way, in a remembered way. Like you've become a sentence in someone else's story. Here's a thing some local elders used to say: the hyena remembers the baby you were. And if it laughs, it's because you've forgotten. The spiral stones mark the edge of something. A time, a season, a habit. You realize they match equinox points. The trail runs in alignment with the setting sun, and this dip you're approaching, it'll fill with light on the right day. Like a mouth remembering how to smile. Historians still debate whether those ancient trails were made in worship or warning. But some believe the hyenas followed the moon, not because they hunted by it, but because it helped them remember where they came from. You crouch and draw a spiral in the dust, just like the ones on the stones. As you do, the wind changes. A scent carries through, not rank, not sweet. Something like old fur and night sweat. You don't see anything, but the pressure shifts. The land holds its breath. Then a giggle. Farther now, moving away. You wipe your hand clean and walk again. The trail goes on. You walk not just where the hyenas walked, but when they walked. Their paws clock the same rhythm season after season, moon after moon. They didn't wander. They remembered. You wonder if maybe they were the first historians. And you're just trying to keep up. The road stops. Not in the normal way, not the dead-end turnaround you fool kind of stop. This is a pause. A moment between breath and sentence. The trail just fades. Dust overtakes it, grass brushes in from either side, but you feel it. Even if the groove is gone, the rhythm stays. The air still leans in one direction. And somewhere in it, something laughs. It's not loud. Just 5 notes. Broken, off-kilter, high-pitched and thin, like someone trying to imitate a child, pretending to imitate an adult, pretending to be a hyena. That kind of loop. You freeze, and for the first time since this strange journey began, you feel mocked. You don't know where it's coming from. Not exactly. Somewhere in the rocks to your left, maybe behind you, maybe in your own skull. You breathe out through your nose and murmur cute, because sarcasm is armor. Then you say, wasn't that funny, because maybe someone needs to know your limit. Here's your fact: hyenas don't actually laugh because they think something's funny. Their giggle is a stress vocalization used when they're in conflict, when they're feeding and fending off others, or when they're nervous. But here's the twist: each hyena has a unique laugh pattern. Researchers can identify them by frequency and tone, which means they remember each other's laughter. Their laughs aren't jokes, they're names. Historians still debate whether the eerie similarity between human giggling and hyena vocalizations influenced ancient myths. But many cultures believed hyenas could steal voices. In parts of East Africa, it was once said that if you wept near a hyena den, your voice might come back to you, but changed. You move again quicker this time. The terrain dips and opens into a bowl-shaped hollow, surrounded by termite hills and rock shelves. It's quiet here, not silent, just waiting. You crouch beside a hollow log, not for cover, just for grounding. The wood smells of old fungus and memory. And then you hear it again. A laugh, but this time not from one voice. Two, no three, overlapping. Not coordinated, not rhythmic, like a conversation happening without you. You strain your ears and pick out syllables, not words, just shapes of emotion, surprise, threat, amusement. A bone clinks somewhere behind the nearest hill. Your hand drifts to your pack, not to grab anything, just to remind yourself you're carrying something heavier than fear. But your fingertips brush something unexpected, soft, crumbling. You pull it out. It's a scrap of parchment. You forgot it was in there. Some field note from a museum you visited, half asleep last month. Scribbled across the top is a phrase in faded ink. They speak in the voice of what they've heard eaten. You stare at it too long, then crumple it back into your pack. Because honestly, what else do you do with that? Here's an off-topic gem for you: parrots aren't the only animals that mimic human voices. There's a whale named Wiki who was trained to say hello. There's a seal that once sounded exactly like a Scottish accent. And one time in a zoo, a raven imitated a crying baby so convincingly that staff searched for an abandoned infant for over an hour. Point is, nature listens, and sometimes it plays it back. You step into the hollow. The sound stops. For a moment, all you hear is wind and the crackle of dry grass under your boots. Then very faintly, something new. Not a laugh, not speech, just a hum. It's soft, throaty, like someone humming a lullaby they never quite learned. And when it cuts off, it's not because it ends. It's because you interrupt it. There at the center of the hollow is a half-buried stone. It's smooth and round, like a grinding surface. On top, a carving. You brush off the dirt. It's a face, but wrong. The eyes are too wide, the teeth are too detailed, the mouth curves back farther than it should, and the ears are huge, almost comically so. But you recognize it. A hyena. You reach out and touch it, and the stone is warm. Not sun warm, breath warm. Like something just finished telling a secret into it. You back away slowly, and the wind kicks up a small chorus of giggles from the surrounding rocks. Natural echoes. You don't know, you don't ask. But as you retreat, one part of your brain keeps turning over a strange, annoying question. If hyenas mimic mourning, who are they copying? Because that sound, those clipped rising notes, you've heard it before. Not from animals, from people, from funerals, from someone barely holding it together at a graveside, trying not to sob too loudly. That's the laugh you heard. Not joy, just grief wrapped in teeth. You head out of the hollow not because you're done here, but because it's done with you. Your feet find the trail again, faint but stubborn. And somewhere behind you, a laugh echoes cut short. It sounds like someone trying to remember how to cry. You don't remember falling asleep, but you remember waking up. It's deep night now, that part of the clock, when even the stars look hesitant. You're propped against a rock, legs folded, wrong neck, sore mouth dry. The fire you didn't make is still unmade. The wind is still blowing. And you swear on your own common sense you were dreaming of chewing something. Not eating, chewing. Bone probably, because your jaw aches. You run your tongue along your teeth, nothing broken, but your molars feel used. like they spent the night grinding something real, something with memory in it. And on your lap, a tooth. Not yours. You don't scream. You're too tired. You just stare at the thing, a fat, yellowed hyena premolar. The kind built for crushing. It's cracked down the middle but cleanly, like it's split to offer you something, a clue, or a warning. Here's your historical fact. Hyena teeth are so resilient that they often survive long after the skeleton decays. In some prehistoric sites, entire crania have eroded away, but the teeth remain smiling quietly out of the sediment like leftover punchlines. In a few rare cases, hyena teeth were found etched with what may have been ceremonial markings, lines, symbols, even punctures filled with resin. Historians still debate whether those marks were decorative, ritualistic, or just really bored early humans experimenting on dental remains. But one thing's consistent: people kept hyena teeth. Sometimes around their necks, sometimes under their floors, sometimes in their mouths molded into jewelry they bit down on during dreams. You hold the tooth closer. It's warm. Again, not sun warm, spit warm. As if someone handed it to you a second ago. You flick on your flashlight and sweep the area. Rocks, dry grass, nothing moves, except something catches your eye, a pattern in the dirt. A line of stones arranged in a semicircle around where you slept. Small, careful, almost tender. You weren't alone. There's a pressure behind your eyes now. Not quite fear, more like recognition. You've had that feeling before, walking into a room you've never entered, but somehow already knowing where the window is and which step will creak. You dig into your bag again. You know it's stupid. You're hoping for comfort, trail mix, a notebook, something human. Instead, you find something else. It's a sliver of wood, half charred. You don't remember packing it, but the surface has been smoothed and etched, one side with a crude outline of a skull, the other with a row of little teeth carved one after the other, all facing downward. You hold it like a relic. It feels like one, a dream-made offering, or a souvenir from someone else's nightmare. Your off-topic moment because your brain needs a break. In 2008, scientists discovered a species of deep-sea squid that defends itself by ejecting glowing mucus. It doesn't sting, it doesn't blind you. It just glows and pulses like an anxious jellyfish. Rave confusing predators long enough for escape. Why mention it? Because you wish you had that defense right now. Something non-violent. Just enough weirdness to confuse the darkness watching you. You sit there a moment longer holding your mystery tooth and your glowing squid energy, trying to rationalize. Maybe this is all stress. Maybe your brain is collecting folklore and half-read research papers and stitching them into a dream. But then you feel it again. The chewing. Not in your mouth this time. Under you. You leap to your feet, heart scraping your ribs, and look down. Nothing. But the soil shifts slightly. Like something is working through the dirt below, slow and rhythmic. A burrower. A digger. The earth is being remembered by something with teeth. You back away, carefully. You speak, not shouting, just offering sound like a peace treaty. I'm going. Nothing responds. But the chewing stops. You walk until your legs ache. Not fast, just steady. Like you're trying not to spook a shadow that's been walking beside you all night. Eventually, you find a rock ledge and sit again facing east, waiting for the sky to give you something softer than this darkness. And as the first pale sliver of sun creeps over the horizon, you do something weird. You take the tooth and press it to your own, gently, just enough to feel the pressure, just enough to hear in your head a tiny echo of grinding. Not hunger, not violence, just memory. It's then you realize something very simple and very disturbing. You're not the first person to do this. You're a part of a pattern. The dream of chewing, the ache in the jaw, the gifts left while you slept, these aren't unique. They're passed down, like a song or a laugh. Hyenas, it turns out, might not be predators of the body. They might be predators of forgetting. And if they leave you a tooth, maybe it's because they want you to remember what it felt like to use one. The village is gone. You don't even see it at first, not because it's hidden, but because your brain doesn't want to admit it was a village. From the hill, all that's visible are a few low ridges overgrown with thorn brush and that creeping silence that covers places abandoned long enough to be embarrassed about it. But when you walk down and brush your hands along the stone, the shapes come back. Foundations, fire circles, a well that's half filled with bones. Most are goat, a few are chicken, and one is long. Too long, definitely not livestock. You pause by what was probably a doorway once. There's a mark carved into the lintel, deliberate even if crude. A circle with two vertical slashes through it and one diagonal line like a mouth caught mid-scream. Your eyes adjust and you start to notice what's missing. No pictures of animals, no scratched-in hunts, no celebration of lions or jackals or bulls or birds. Nothing, except warnings. On almost every wall, scratches, not drawings. No hyenas depicted, just the evidence of their absence. As if carving their shape was forbidden, as if giving them form might give them permission. Here's your historical fact. In several ancient Ethiopian and Somali traditions, hyenas were considered taboo to name aloud. Whole communities avoided saying the word waraba or marar, not out of politeness but fear. Naming the hyena was believed to summon it, or worse, invite its memory to stay. Historians still debate whether this cultural erasure was fear-based or a strategy for spiritual negotiation. But across centuries and languages, a pattern forms: naming is power, and silence is insurance. You step into what was once a home. A roofless room with a small hearth and a strange bundle in the corner. It's twine-wrapped, neat, maybe ceremonial. You unwrap it slowly, ready for bones. But instead you find masks. 4 of them. None shaped like animals, all shaped like emotions. Wide grins, hollow eyes, a forehead lined with carved wrinkles that resemble claw marks. They're not terrifying, but they're not joyful either. They're exaggerations. Performances of something deeper. You pick one up and feel its weight. Wood and clay. The inside is smooth from wear. Whoever wore it did so often, long enough to polish the memory into it. You turn the mask toward the light, and finally see it. Under the surface smile, someone has etched a single phrase tiny right under the chin. You don't speak the language, but you feel the meaning. To laugh without teeth is to lie to the dark. You put it down carefully. This wasn't theater. This was protection. Ritualized denial. Laugh loudly enough and maybe the real laughter outside won't notice you hiding. You head toward the center of the village. There's a slab of rock shaped like an altar but low, more of a bench. Beside it, buried up to the jaw, is a skull. Not human, and not buried for anyone. Buried as a warning. It's a hyena skull, but the teeth are all filed blunt, not broken filed. Every cusp rounded down. Every edge softened, as if someone feared it might bite even after death. Or perhaps they hoped foolishly to keep it from laughing. Your off-topic nugget in Papua New Guinea. Certain tribes once used beetle wings as currency. Not gold, not shells, just iridescent insect fragments because they shimmered and didn't rot. A reminder that value isn't always about strength or usefulness. Sometimes it's about mystery, or durability, or the sound it makes when you shake it. You sit on the edge of the altar. Dust puffs up around you like a shrug. The silence presses in again. This time it feels dense, not empty, just full of things that refuse to speak. You whisper, "What happened here?" The wind whistles through the broken walls like a flute trying to remember a song. And from the edge of the brush, a shape moves, not a full hyena, just its impression. A lean shadow that steps once, then freezes. Watching, not approaching, not fleeing, just making sure you notice it. You don't move. You blink once. It's gone. You look back at the skull with the filed teeth, the warning, or maybe the request. No one painted hyenas here. No one named them. No one dared. But they remembered them, and they taught the memory to their masks, to their walls, to the spaces between things. You realize something uncomfortable. This entire village is a hyena memory trap, not to catch the animals, but to contain the memory, to keep it from walking out and laughing at someone else. You don't stay much longer. On your way out, you find a small smooth stone by the path. You pick it up. There's a line scratched into it, a crude mouth with too many teeth. You drop it gently back where it belongs. You've seen enough. Some laughter isn't for sharing. Some names should stay unspoken, and some memories are better off filed blunt. The landscape shifts again gently, like a dream trying to forget its last scene. You walk through a dry gully that smells of copper and sun-bleached regrets. It feels old in that specific way battlefields do, not loud, just tired. Your boots crunch on something brittle. You look down. Bones, again. But different this time. These are flat, broads, not the splintered leftovers of a predator's meal. These are tools, or were, drum frames. You can tell by the stretch of cured hide still clinging to the wood like an old blister. The surface is too tight to be random decay. Someone made this. Someone hid it, and someone buried it. You kneel and touch the hide. It hums back. Not musically, just in the way certain objects remember pressure. Here's your historical fact across ancient North and East Africa. Hyena-hide was occasionally used to cover war drums. Not lion, not zebra, hyena. It was believed to carry both strength and confusion, perfect for warfare. Some oral traditions even warned that the drum could attract what it was made from if played too long at night. Historians still debate whether this was a warning, a boast, or a trick to keep children from making noise. But there are reports, mostly whispered, that drummers sometimes found hyenas circling the edges of camps, not attacking, not snarling, just listening. You step back. There are more drums, half buried in a crescent pattern like a smile laid flat. Some are broken, others still seem whole. And beneath them, bones. Human and hyena, not in combat, just mingled. Like the story ended without telling anyone who won. And then you notice the scorch marks, dark rings in the dirt. The kind left by fire pits or something hotter. The ground around them looks cooked, black and glassy. You step around the edge and catch the faintest whiff of burnt oil and hair centuries old. You're standing in a grave of rituals. You picture it, dusk drums rising, warriors painted in dust and fear, shadows moving in the brush. The hyena isn't summoned. It's already there, waiting, just outside the circle of song. Because hyenas don't need to be invited. They show up when memory gets too loud. You press your hand into the blackened soil. It's cool now, but deep down, still warm. Like the ashes haven't stopped arguing. Your off-topic brain break. Did you know? Sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins. Up to 40 minutes. By slowing their heart rate, they can nap underwater. It's not helpful right now, but it does make you wonder if time works differently for creatures that move without urgency. You step back to the drums. One of them, smaller, handheld, is almost intact. You lift it, light but dense with silence. The hide on top is split slightly, and you see something wedged underneath. A stone, a tooth, a human tooth. You drop it, but not in fear, more like respect. You whisper, sorry, out loud, just in case. The wind responds with a low whistle. Then behind you, the crunch of something stepping on dry bone. You turn fast. Nothing. Just the drums. The empty field. The memory of pressure. But you don't believe it. You crouch again, closer this time, and run your fingers across the hide. It vibrates. For real. Not a trick of nerves. The drum hums like a voice without a mouth. Like it remembers being struck, and maybe being feared. You don't hit it. But you understand now why no one stayed here. Here's what one local legend claims: in times of war, when people didn't know who would betray whom, they played the hyena drums to lure the liars into the open. If you flinched, you were suspect. If you laughed, worse. Because hyenas, it turns out, know how to spot fear in a face. And sometimes they mimic it just to see who joins in. You whisper again, this isn't for me. Then you bury the drum gently, pulling dry grass over it as if tucking it back in. Some things shouldn't be unearthed twice. As you leave the field, you notice a strange rock at the edge of the path. You move closer. It's not a rock. It's a piece of skull, a hyena. Just the top half. Jaw missing, eye sockets wide, and balanced perfectly between the brows a human finger bone. Clean, intact. You laugh because it's either that or screaming. It echoes once, then twice. Then behind you a chorus of short clipped barks. Not close, not far, just right on the edge of the meaning. You don't run, you walk. Because this isn't a place for panic. It's a place for remembering. The war is long over. The drums are silent, but the hyena still listens. And sometimes if you play it wrong, it plays you back. You wake up coughing ash. Not real ash, just memory ash. That dry taste in the back of your throat like you slept too close to an old story and breathed in its embers. The sky is pale and tired. The kind of color that looks like someone erased the blue and never bothered replacing it. You're at the edge of the canyon now. One that wasn't on your map. One you didn't mean to find. And there across the gulch carved into a soot-black cliff face is a story you were never meant to read. A hyena mouth, open tongue out, fire pouring from between its teeth. It's not a modern carving. The lines are old weather-smoothed but still full of motion. The fire isn't a separate detail, it is the hyena. Tongues of flame spiral out like a scream made of light. You stare at it too long trying to understand why it doesn't look ridiculous. It should, but it doesn't. It looks inevitable. Here's your historical fact in various ancient Sahelian myths, particularly along the old trans-Saharan routes. There are legends of fire carriers, animals said to bring fire to early humans often by accident. While many versions feature monkeys or birds, a few rare stories describe a striped hyena who stole a coal from the gods and carried it in its mouth, laughing the whole way until its jaw cracked open from the heat. That crack? It became the source of all wildfires. Historians still debate whether these stories were metaphors for natural brush fires or moral tales about chaos. But the iconography sticks hyena equals fire. Not for warmth, for reminder. You pick your way down the rocky slope toward the carving. The wind is warmer here. Not pleasant, not breezy, heavy, like it's carrying breath from an argument that's still going on somewhere deep underground. As you get closer to the wall, you notice the details in the stone. The hyena's tail isn't curled behind it. It's dragging, like a fuse, leading into a spiral of flame that loops back into the earth. A carved warning, or maybe a map. You run your fingers along the grooves and the heat catches you by surprise. The stone is warm, not sun-warmed, internally warm. You step back. Behind you is a pile of charred wood, or what looks like it. But as you approach, you realize it's not wood at all. Bones, burned black, layered like a campfire someone tried to forget. You crouch and touch one. It crumbles under your fingers like baked parchment. And in the center of the pile, a rock shaped exactly like a tongue. Too smooth, too red, too recent. You don't pick it up. Instead, you sit and breathe. Not to calm down, but because you feel like the air needs proof you're alive. That's when you notice the smell. It's not smoke, it's spit. Burnt spit. As if something once laughed here really laughed and left behind the scorch marks of its joy. Your off-topic detour. Did you know there's a beetle that can survive being boiled alive? The Oreocharis beetle produces a protein armor that hardens in real time when exposed to extreme heat. It doesn't scream, it just endures. You feel like that beetle right now. The wind changes direction and the heat lifts for a second. That's when you hear it. A voice, not a word. A sound. Something like, ha, hey. Not mocking, not mean, just dry, cracked, like someone trying to remember how to laugh after centuries of swallowing coals. You turn around. Nothing. You turn back. And the rock you didn't touch. The tongue-shaped one, it's gone. You do not investigate. You do not chase it. You do the opposite of brave. You walk away fast but steady, muttering your own little nonsense song to yourself, like a traveler trying to drown out a ghost. Not my fire, not my fire, not my fire. When you reach the ridge again, you look back at the cliff, and this time the hyena carving looks different. Its mouth is closed now. You blink, still closed. No flame, no spiral. Just a tired beast with soot in its fur and something held behind its teeth, as if it's waiting, as if it's keeping the next fire just in case. You hike until your legs stop working. You camp without unpacking. You don't sleep. You don't eat. You just sit up under a crooked tree and wonder how many stories humans owe to animals who never meant to start them. You whisper thanks into the dirt. Because if the hyena did bring fire, maybe it didn't mean to burn anything. Maybe it just wanted you to remember that flame hurts, that laughter scars, that even a joke can blister, and that every time you light a fire, you owe someone a tooth. The path is almost too clean. You're not used to that anymore. Not after days of dust bones, memories, and teeth. But this one, a long strip of dry, packed earth, between two rocky slopes, looks freshly swept. No prints, no debris, just stone dust and silence stretching ahead like it's been waiting for you. You walk slower, because something about a clean path in an ancient place feels suspicious, like walking into a room where the chairs are just slightly too straight. Then about 10 paces in you see them. Footprints. A lot of them. But only going one direction. You kneel. The prints are deep and sharp. Recent. Human mostly. Some booted, some barefoot, and scattered among them almost like punctuation hyena tracks. Four-toed, wide-splayed, just a little too much. Spaced evenly, but with a rhythm you recognize now. This isn't a chase, it's a procession. You stand, and for a second, a dumb, hollow second, you wonder where they went. Because the prints go forward toward the bend in the path. But they don't come back. Here's your historical fact: in some Sahelian desert communities, there are stone pilgrimage paths laid down before maps. They predate settlements. Some are said to lead nowhere. But every few decades, someone walks them again. And every time hyena tracks appear beside the human ones. Not random, aligned. Some believe the hyenas walked beside mourners guiding them. Others believe they walked behind sniffing memory like a scent trail. Historians still debate whether this was real animal behavior or metaphor. But the footprints remain, stubborn as names scratched into bone. You follow the trail. The canyon narrows until the path becomes a groove in the rock. The walls rise up on either side, tight and vertical. You feel held, not cradled. Contained. Every step echoes, and those echoes take longer and longer to come back. As if the path itself is getting tired of hearing your voice. Then you reach the strange part. The prints stop, just like that. Mid-step, no scuff, no pivot, no heel turn. They just end. And what replaces them is harder to understand. Not new footprints, just depressions. As if the same foot kept stepping in the exact same place over and over until the rock forgot how to be rock and became a memory of that step instead. You reach out and run your hand over one. It's smooth, polished, like a thumb-worn coin. You say it before you mean to. Who walked here first? No answer. But then the wind returns, and not as a breeze. This is that deep-pitched canyon breath, that long exhale that knows too much. It pulls dust across the path, revealing something else. A series of smaller prints, circular, barely there. Hyena pads. And not just any, these are impossibly old. You recognize the shape from fossil casts you once saw behind glass. Crocuta spelaea, the Ice Age cave hyena. Bigger than modern ones. Bolder. Nearly lion-sized, long, extinct. But the prints are here, pressed into dry stone like they were made this morning. Your off-topic fact, because you deserve a weird brain hug. There's a jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, that can revert its cells back to a juvenile state, effectively aging in reverse. It's called the immortal jellyfish. But even it can't escape being eaten. Immortality, it turns out, doesn't mean untouchable, just repeatable. You think about that as you trace the fossil footprints. Maybe memory works like that too. Maybe this path doesn't remember the hyena. Maybe the hyena is the memory. You follow the prints farther, and that's when you see it. A handprint in the stone wall, pressed deep. 5 fingers, human-sized. But the odd part is what's next to it, a paw print. Matching. Like something paused here and rested both hand and foot together. Like 2 creatures of different blood stood side by side, both of them agreeing, this is where it happened. You don't know what it is, but the echo in your chest says it was important. You turn back and look at the trail. It stretches behind you like a fossilized sentence no one finished. Every depression, every print, every step repeated until even the land gave up resisting. And somewhere in that repetition, something began to live. You squat and press your own hand into the ancient print. It doesn't fit. Too wide, too long. You try the paw. It doesn't fit either, but it feels warm. Again, internally warm, like it hasn't finished cooling from the last memory it carried. You don't stay. You step out of the canyon and into the wind. It whistles around you like it's forgotten how to hum. You walk forward away from the footprints that refuse to fade. And behind you, the path stays clean. No dust settles, no prints form, as if it's waiting for someone else to try again. To step where the memory lives, to forget where they end, to walk until the trail remembers them. You smell the cave before you see it. Not that musky, mossy smell of an ordinary cave, the kind filled with bats and damp secrets. No, this one smells like breath. Dry breath, hot breath. The kind that comes from a creature resting with its mouth slightly open, not asleep but pretending. You pause at the mouth of the hollow. It's not wide but tall. Almost architectural, with stone draped like a curtain pulled back just enough to let the wind whisper through. You step closer. The shadows move wrong. Not fast, just rehearsed. Like this cave has been practicing fear for generations and finally got the lighting right. You think about turning around, but you don't, because inside, somewhere deep and slow, you hear a sound. Not a growl, a purr, but not feline. A rumble made of dirt and patience. You step inside. The walls are smooth and worn not by water but by habit. Scrape marks line the entrance deep at claw height. Old ones. Dozens layered on top of each other, and just inside the first chamber there's a pile of cloth. No, not cloth. Hide. Woven into a kind of nest. Not animal bedding, something more intentional. Something shaped. And in the center of it all, a small object wrapped in bark. You know better, but you unwrap it. Inside is a child's toy. A simple figure made from bone and hair. The face is vaguely human, 2 eye holes, no mouth, and its arms are disproportionately long, dragging on the ground like they forgot when to stop growing. It is not adorable. You whisper, nope, and gently rewrap it. But before you can set it down, you hear it, a laugh. Tiny, from deeper inside, childlike. You freeze. You scan the shadows for movement. There's nothing. But the air shifts like something has stood up. You tuck the toy back into the bark and back away. You are now at the part of the story where things start to explain themselves in feelings rather than facts. Here's your historical fact during periods of drought and famine. In ancient East Africa, there are scattered oral traditions of children being left near hyena dens, not as sacrifices but as pacts. The stories say the children were returned days later unharmed but changed. Some stopped speaking. Some could only laugh. One reportedly came back knowing the names of all the dead in his village. Historians still debate the truth behind these tales, if they're metaphors for orphaned survival or literal accounts of animal fostering behavior. But the fossils in certain dens contain remains of both animal and human infants, strangely untouched. You step further in. The second chamber of the cave opens like a throat round and echolases. In the middle, on a platform of packed dirt, is a shallow depression, something like a cradle, or a nest, or both. And resting inside, a single necklace, bone beads. Tiny, probably milk teeth. mixed with knotted fur and one smooth hyena canine. It's been polished, loved, worn thin by small fingers. You reach toward it but stop, because across from the necklace carved into the stone wall is a drawing. A mother, human, kneeling beside a hyena. Between them, a child, blurry, sketchy, as if the artist couldn't decide what species it belonged to. And under that, a series of dots. 5 rows, 5 dots each. You count them instinctively. 25. You don't know what it means, but your spine does. It means time, ritual, repetition, memory. You back away again. You're off-topic breather. There's a species of octopus that will collect broken shells and coconut halves to build its own armored bunker on the seafloor. It carries them around like luggage. It's not instinctual. It's problem-solving. Defense through creativity. You'd like to build a bunker right now, preferably one that laughs less. You make your way back toward the entrance, but as you pass the hide nest again, you see something new. Small claw marks overlapping each other in tight circles, not from adult claws, from something smaller, lighter, practicing. And that's when it hits you. This wasn't a den. It was a nursery, not just for hyenas, for whatever bonded with them, for the children who were left and who maybe never came back all the way human. You walk outside and breathe air that isn't made of echoes. It tastes clean, but not safe. Because now, you're thinking about who else might be raised in places like that. Who else might have learned to laugh without needing words? Who might be out there grown now wearing human skin like a borrowed cloak, still listening for the giggle in the dark? You whisper, "Thank you," not because you're grateful, but because gratitude might be the only thing hyenas respect more than fear. And as you leave the canyon behind, you don't look back. Not because you're brave, but because if you did, you're pretty sure someone small, barefoot, and softly laughing would be standing there, holding the necklace, waiting for you to forget. You don't know it's a graveyard at first. It looks like a hill, a lumpy, overgrown mound baked by sun and ignored by time. But the closer you get, the more it starts to whisper back at you, not in sound, but in shape. You see the bones first. They're subtle, not arranged like warnings or stacked like trophies, just settled. Scattered in a way that suggests quiet endings. Here, a rib cage. There, a cranium, long fractured by weather but still holding its curve like a bowed head. Then you see the teeth. Too many of them. Too even. Hyena jaws mostly, but not wild, not gnawed, not chaotic. Placed. You crouch, brushing dust from a jawbone. There's a string of shells looped through the back molars, like a necklace or a leash. It doesn't make sense until you notice the carvings. Just a few worn smooth by wind, almost hidden in the creases of the slope. You trace them with your fingers, concentric circles fading into one another like water ripples frozen in stone. One circle is filled with dots. 5 rows. Again. 25. You say it aloud, just to feel the number. 25. The wind answers by not answering. Here's your historical fact in several regions of prehistoric. North Africa burial mounds have been uncovered where animal remains vastly outnumber human ones. Often hyenas, jackals, and wild dogs appear in these sites, but always carefully arranged. In some cases, human remains seem to have been added later, tucked between pre-existing animal skeletons, almost like latecomers to a party they weren't invited to. Historians still debate whether these sites were animal graveyards adopted by desperate humans or the reverse. But one unsettling pattern recurs: hyenas buried in positions of rest, not restraint, not trophies, as if they had been honored. Or worse included. You climb the mound. The bones crunch slightly beneath your boots. Not snapping, just sighing. You try not to look too closely at what you're stepping on, but your eyes find it anyway. A femur. Human. Wrapped at the base in braided hide. Decorated with 6 beads. You've stopped trying to explain things. Now you just try to listen. At the summit, the ground levels out into a shallow bowl. Sunlight hits it wrong, like it's too yellow, too soft. You stand still, and then you see it. A ring of stones. 25 again, But at the very center lies something that chills you deeper than any skull or claw ever could. It's a wooden marker, still upright, still painted though the color is mostly gone. On the front, a simple symbol, not a word, a laughing mouth drawn in 3 strokes, and beneath it scratched faintly in charcoal. We rest here now. Do not wake us twice. You whisper, I won't, before you realize you've spoken. And then you notice what lies around the circle. Not bones this time. Shoes. Faded, rotting, human. Pairs of them, arranged like offerings or arrivals. Some large, some small. One pair so tiny it hurts your chest. You want to believe this is just metaphor. That someone long ago made this as a story circle. A shrine. A warning. But the earth says otherwise. The earth says this is a memory mound. A place that remembers for you. You kneel because standing feels inappropriate now. You place your hand on the dirt. It's warm. But more than that, it hums. Like there's a drum under the surface beating once every few minutes. Not loud, not aggressive, just reminding. Your off-topic escape. There's a fungus in the forests of Japan called dead man's fingers. It grows in clusters that resemble decaying human digits. It only surfaces in late spring after long periods of silence. Mycologists say it remembers wood, that it only grows where death used to live. Back to the mound. You sit a little longer. You think about the children who were once left with hyenas, the wars where drums were played until the teeth returned, the masks worn to hide from dreams. And now this, a graveyard for creatures that once scared us, but somehow became our neighbors. You wonder honestly if this is even a hyena mound anymore, or if it ever was. Maybe humans came here in famine, in drought, looking for shelter in something older than kindness. Maybe the hyenas were already buried. Maybe we asked to join them. Maybe we became the laughter too. You leave a stone, just a plain one, no markings, but you whisper a joke as you place it. A dumb one, just to honor the name carved into the marker. Then you walk back down the mound. Careful not to look too long at the shoes. Careful not to breathe too deep. And as you step onto the path again, you hear a sound behind you. One short laugh. Tired. Not cruel. Not even amused. Just remembering. You walk for a long time without speaking. Not to yourself. Not to the trees. Not even to the wind, which has been oddly quiet, like it's letting you carry this next part alone. The path takes you through a grove of stone pillars. Natural ones, probably, but shaped so perfectly they feel placed. Each rises from the earth like a question too old to answer. On a few of them you spot faint carvings. Smiles, circles, teeth. Always teeth. Then you find it, the mask. Not buried, not hidden. Just waiting. It's propped neatly against the base of one pillar. Woven from bark sinew and what you swear is fur. The face is unmistakable, a stylized hyena grin stretched just past comfort. Not monstrous, just too familiar. You lift it. It's heavier than it looks. Not by weight, by story. The eye holes are slightly uneven, the jawline painted with stripes. But the strangest thing is the underside. Someone has patted it. Soft cloth lining the interior, stitched carefully as if it were worn often. You turn it over and read the inscription on the back, written in that same looping script you've seen before. Wear it when your dreams turn sharp. You don't laugh, but you smile. Because of course that's the instruction. Here's your historical fact. Certain nomadic tribes in the Horn of Africa used masks, carved to resemble hyenas during ritual dances meant to confuse evil spirits. But the purpose wasn't intimidation, it was misdirection. By imitating the creature most associated with graveyards and stolen memory, the wearer hoped to become unrecognizable to the dead. Historians still debate whether these masks were used in healing exorcism or just dry-season theater. But many accounts mention this. The people who wore the hyena mask often laughed in their sleep afterward. You sit beneath the pillar and place the mask in your lap. You consider putting it on. You shouldn't, so you do. At first, nothing. Then the world quiets. Not silent, just muffled, like being underwater or in a dream. You look through the crooked eye holes and the stone grove seems different, smaller, like a dollhouse version of itself. The trees blur at the edges, the sky folds a little, and then to your left something moves. It's not a hyena, it's you, or someone wearing your shape. They're standing beside a small fire, laughing, not loudly, not cruelly, just knowingly. Then another figure steps forward, a hyena on two legs, not cartoonish, not wrong, just familiar. They face each other, you and the beast, both wearing the same grin, both bowing slightly, both mimicking. Then the vision flickers, the fire goes out. You yank off the mask, gasping. You're alone again. The grove hasn't changed, but something inside you has. Not a big thing, just a tickle behind your thoughts. Like a joke you're about to remember but haven't quite earned yet. You look at the mask again. It's smiling up at you like it knows what just happened. You whisper, not funny. And somewhere nearby, a leaf rustles like a giggle being swallowed. Your off-topic comfort snack. There's a mountain in China that sings. When the wind blows through its crevices at the right angle, it produces flute-like tones. Locals say it's the mountain remembering songs it heard centuries ago. Geologists say it's just acoustics. Either way, it hums when no one's listening. Back to the mask. You wrap it gently in your coat and tuck it into your pack. Not as a souvenir, as a tool, in case your dreams get sharp, in case your memories laugh too loud. As you stand, you see one more thing carved into the pillar's base. You kneel, brushing dust away until the words appear. Laughter bends the shadow. Wear it when it gets too long. You look at your own shadow. It's stretched behind you, lean and quiet. You walk on. And behind you for just a second, your shadow has a second mouth. It smiles. You reach the edge of the world just after dusk. That's what it feels like anyway. The landscape drops off suddenly as if someone took a bite out of the continent. A dry valley sprawls below, flat gray, scattered with broken trees and whispering rocks. It doesn't feel abandoned. It feels paused. And across the chasm, built into the far cliff like it was swallowed mid-sentence, is a cave system. A big one. From here, it looks like the mouth of something that never finished laughing. You descend slowly. Halfway down, the light changes. Not darker, thicker. The air grows syrupy, full of scent dust, old stone maybe, fur. At the bottom, you see the footprints. Again, not many, just a few, but fresh. Human and hyena side by side. Like someone walked here recently, like someone still does. You follow them to the mouth of the largest cave. There's a sign, not wooden, not carved, just bones, arranged in the shape of a spiral with a single rib stabbed vertically into the center. It says in its own language, stop, or repeat. You step inside, and the silence greets you, not with absence, with memory. This isn't just a cave. It's an archive. Skulls line the walls in perfect rows, not stacked, displayed. Every few meters, there's a stone pedestal with some token placed atop it. A tooth, a feather, a doll's arm, a bent spoon, a bundle of hair. And in the center of the largest chamber, a single chair. Wooden, worn, and empty. Here's your historical fact. In a controversial excavation near Lake Turkana, researchers uncovered a cave containing over 40 hyena skulls arranged around a circular seating pit. No tools. No food remains. Just evidence of human presence and symbols painted on the wall resembling a seated figure surrounded by teeth. Some believe it was ceremonial. Others suggest it was a warning system or a place to listen. Historians still debate whether the cave was used by shaman, mourners, or memory keepers. But one detail stuck: the acoustics. Even the faintest whisper echoed perfectly. It amplified breath, as if designed to let memory speak louder than the living. You sit in the chair, not because you want to, but because it would feel rude not to. The second you do, you hear it. A voice, not outside, inside the stone. It says, "We already tried remembering for you." Then silence. Then the laughter. Not loud, not gleeful, just tired. You whisper, "I didn't ask you to." The cave replies, "You always do." You close your eyes and see the shadows behind your eyelids start to rearrange themselves. They become moments you never lived, people you never met, hands holding fur, children leaving toys, mothers letting go of sons and praying the hyena remembers how to raise them with just enough fear to survive. You open your eyes again, your off-topic breather. There's a type of lizard in Australia that can squirt blood from its eyes when threatened. It does this not to injure but to confuse. The predators hesitate. The lizard lives. You file that away. Maybe confusion is its own kind of mercy. Back in the cave, the skulls are watching. You know that's not literally true, but it's true enough. You stand, and on impulse you whisper your name, just to see what the cave does. It echoes back twice, once in your own voice, once in something else, lighter, almost amused. You walk toward the back of the chamber where a crack in the wall lets in just enough moonlight to suggest an exit. But just before you leave, you hear something behind you shift. You turn, and one of the skulls has fallen. It rolled slightly, now resting sideways, mouth open, as if laughing or whispering. You step out into the night air and breathe deeply. Then you feel it, a presence beside you. Not threatening, just present. You turn your head slightly. No one there, but the sound of quiet footsteps mimics yours exactly. One delay behind. And for the rest of the night, no matter where you go, something walks beside you, laughing only when you pause. Never too loud, never too far behind. Like it's helping you remember how to leave. You walk until the path disappears, not ends, just forgets itself. Like it's too tired to continue and hopes you won't notice. The ground becomes wild again. No more footprints or drums, no more spirals or skulls. Just soil, wind, and the slow hush of trees breathing in memories you can't quite hold. The presence beside you is quieter now, but it's still there. No footsteps, just a rhythm. A weight in the air that shifts slightly whenever you hesitate. It's not following you, it's echoing you. The moon is out, pale and indifferent, casting shadows long and liquid across the scrubland. And your shadow moves the way it should, mostly, but sometimes it flickers. Like there's a delay. Like it's remembering which way you lean a half-second late. You reach a clearing. Flat, open, circular. Of course, the grass here is short, sparse, trampled in places where nothing has walked in centuries. At the center is a single stone. Not tall, not marked, just present. You sit beside it, and the silence folds around you like old paper. You take off your pack, reach inside, pull out the mask. You hadn't planned to wear it again, but your hands move on their own. The mask slips over your face, and suddenly everything becomes clearer. Not visually, emotionally. You know where you are. You know what this place is. It's not a grave. It's not a den. It's not even a memory. It's a mirror for things that are still trying to forget. And as you breathe through the eye holes of your borrowed grin, you hear it again. That laugh, right beside you, right behind you. But it isn't mocking. It isn't joyful. It's tired. Familiar. You take off the mask slowly, and in the moonlight, you see her. A girl, maybe 10 years old, barefoot, wearing a necklace of tiny teeth and a coat made of fur that doesn't belong to one animal. Her face is not quite human, not quite anything, but her smile is exactly what you expect. She sits across from you, legs crossed, says nothing, but she's laughing without sound, shoulders shaking, eyes full of something ancient and kind. She reaches forward, holds out her hand. In it, a tooth. Another one, cracked down the center. You don't take it, not yet. You say, "Why me?" She shrugs, then whispers not in your language but in meaning. Because you listened. Here's your final off-topic moment. In Iceland, some towns still shift roadways to avoid disturbing elf habitats. They don't always believe the elves are real. They just believe it's rude not to consider them. Memory, you realize, isn't about facts. It's about respect. You take the tooth from her hand. It's warm. You feel its weight. Not physical, narrative. A symbol passed like a sentence whispered across 1,000 years of chewing bones and stealing breath. She stands, and without another sound walks backward into the trees, disappearing before he turns around. You sit in the clearing holding the tooth, wearing the mask in your lap, and finally understand the hyenas were never just laughing at us. They were holding space for the things we couldn't face, the bones we buried wrong, the stories we edited for comfort, the grief we refused to chew. You whisper a joke into the dirt. It isn't funny, but it feels like it used to be. And the land laughs once, low, echoed, familiar, then goes still. You stand. The echo follows. Not haunting, just remembering. Because now, so do you. So, tonight you walked beside creatures long misunderstood. Not just scavengers or villains of bedtime tales, but archivists of memory, of grief, of laughter that doesn't need a punchline. You crossed bone fields and shadow paths, sat beneath trees that remembered more than your ancestors, held teeth, wore masks, whispered into the dirt, and something whispered back, hyenas. It turns out are not just echoes of fear, they are echoes of everything. Of the children left in their care, of the graves they tended before humans learned how to shape one properly, of the rituals we forgot but still feel in our jaw when we dream of chewing. They walked beside us through famine, through laughter, through the quiet that comes after war. And when we buried them, we were not banishing them. We were asking them to stay, to remember for us. Now, as the wind cools and your room comes back into focus, let yourself exhale. You're not haunted. You're just part of a memory trail. One that laughs behind you softly, so you won't walk alone. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Now, gently set your phone down or close your laptop. Let the lights stay off a little longer. Let the fan hum like ancient breath. And if something laughs from the corner of your dream tonight, just nod. They're remembering you too.